In this round, the remaining 6 startups will be vying for their spot among the 3 finalists who will be pitching tomorrow. To repeat the rules, 4 minutes to startups for pitching and 3 minutes of questioning by the judges. Remember, please, that at the end of this round, we would like for you to vote for the People's Choice Award, which you can do in the polls tab on our virtual platform. I'm happy to welcome a new flight of dragons for round 2. Welcome to Kay Shibata, Laura Holdsworth, and Frederick Baru. Kicking us off this afternoon and dialing in from South Africa is Lasha Vinther on behalf of Local Holiday Deals. Lasha, when you're ready.
Thank you. All right, let's go. Hi, my name is Les. I'm the co-founder of Local Holiday Deals. We are a package meta marketplace in South Africa, and we use the best of travel tech and data science to connect leads with the best agencies in South Africa. And our platform is fully automated. It aggregates all the packages on the South African market. We process that, standardize that, and present it to the customer so they can search it and compare. Next slide, please. We believe that the South African market is around 250 million at current states. That will, of course, increase as the market recovers. We are based in South Africa and focused on South Africa, but we have African ambitions. Next slide, please. So there's a number of challenges both on the user side and the agent side. On the user side, it's highly fragmented content, so it's very difficult for people to actually find it. It's time consuming. There's no transparency around pricing, and it's also difficult for them to find trusted local content as well. On the agent side, often the ITCs or smaller agencies don't really have much online presence. They don't have a lot of knowledge around online marketing. And so for them, it becomes difficult to find a new audience online. And ultimately, that's what we are helping the agents with. Next slide, please. So we have a two-sided marketplace. On the one hand, on the left, we have the users, which of course is free to use. There, basically, you can achieve cost savings, you can achieve greater personalization, and of course, you can have a greater selection. On the agency side, we generate more leads. We allow for better insight into the product and into the marketplace, and we can also give them access to a broader supply. Next slide, please. And so basically, our platform is utilizing cloud and it's mobile first. We actually do use machine learning. We currently collect more than 1,000 packages daily, which is the largest aggregation in South Africa. We have a full back office built out for lead management. We also have a back office built out for content management for package creation. Next slide, please. So revenue model is twofold. We basically have the performance side, which is a CPA side, and a CPC, which is usual for meta marketplace. But on the other hand, we also have a subscription model where we can allow for subscribing to various modules such as leads management, invoicing, supply modules, etc. Next slide, please. So the customer for us is mainly the younger crowds, predominantly female and predominantly mobile. Next slide, please. So status, we currently aggregate the whole South African market. We have the largest aggregation of holiday packages already. We have a full product built out. Everything is automated. Everything is cloud-based. We do utilize machine learning. We have also done integration with the content management system that allows this to be provided for more than 200 smaller agencies. We've tested out the marketing over the last months, and we've had good traction. We also tested this with scale, and basically the results are looking very promising. Next slide, please. The founding team, 4 founders. We probably have the best data team in travel in Africa, more than 30 years experience. We have raised for other projects, and we also have experience in the startup space and in the scale-up space. Thank you. Next slide. Ultimately, we're looking for funding. We haven't raised anything to date. We're bootstrapped. We are actively looking for funding. We think we have a strong product and we have a good product market fit. Thank you.
Hello? Okay. Thank you for that. You mentioned that this is right now in South Africa and plan to scale into Africa. Are your customer base also, you mentioned young female, but are they also South Africa based, or are you planning to reach customers beyond?
Yeah, this is basically an outbound marketplace, so predominantly for local travelers or in Africa for Africans at this point in stage.
Thank you for your presentation. Just a question on data management and data fragmentation. You mentioned this is a very fragmented market out there on that field. How did you solve that problem? I didn't quite understand.
We basically utilize web scraping. So each of the providers are being basically scraped. We also have API integration. So depending on what a supplier would like to offer. But what we see mostly is that people would like to feature content, but they actually don't have APIs. So the only way for us to actually do this is actually doing scraping. Yeah. Web crawlers. Yeah.
So, what is the biggest challenge besides the fundraising?
Right. So I think the main challenge here is that inherently these sort of transactions, it's not like a meta marketplace for flights where everything is tracked end to end. There's an offline component here. And I think that's still where our platform has a problem to solve to help better conversion. And that is actually to get better visibility on the last step of the transaction, which in many cases is still quite an offline experience.
Thank you. How do you manage, if you are scraping primarily as your lead content, how do you curate and manage the customer if you're not the owner of the content?
Right. So we basically only facilitate the relationship. So we are a brand neutral marketplace. So all the brands are front and center. We can either refer the traffic directly to the supplier site, or if they wish to do so, we can collect the leads and they basically manage those leads on our back end. So it is still a supplier that owns that relationship 100%.
How would you describe the competitive landscape that you are facing currently?
It's an interesting one because we don't really see anyone else doing what we're doing currently. I think there are others that have tried to do a lot around dynamic packaging and so on, and probably a lot of you in the audience know the challenges around that. And in Africa, maybe it lags a little bit more behind also. So I would say the competition is probably more so towards the larger agencies. But other than that, we don't really see anyone doing the same thing. You would often see big agencies that are very much focused on packages and they have their own brand and so forth.
Okay, we have to stop you there, Lasha, because you're out of time, and move on to our next startup, which is Safe Travel Barometer. And Virendra Jain will be joining us to pitch for them. Virendra, please.
Hello, everybody. We started Safe Travel Barometer in May 2020 at the onset of COVID pandemic to help travel industry revive. Next slide, please. At Safe Travel Barometer, we provide travel health security solutions for suppliers, intermediaries, and destinations. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Right. So imagine you are a frontline agent for an airline and you're very well versed with passports, visas. You have processed that at the time of check-in all your life, right? From the new normal, now you also have to figure out what are the arrival protocols at the destination, which is the type of test that is accepted, whether fully jabbed travelers are accepted, what are the quarantine requirements, what's been happening with the self-help declaration form. To ascertain if a traveler is fit to travel has never been more complex. Next slide, please. So In the new normal, the enabler are going to be the traveler health documentation. That's going to be your test reports. That's going to be your vaccination certificate. And in time, that's going to be a booster. Pretty easy, right? What's the confusion? Singapore and Hong Kong are two ports which have made the most sincere efforts to build a corridor or to build a travel bubble. Pardon my French, but it's been a clusterfuck of astronomical proportions historically. The reason is we are figuring out the layer of health on travel as we speak. There is tremendous amount of fragmentation. Each country is doing what they think is best for their own benefits. There are data protection issues, privacy issues, and supplier also face technical integration issues. Pretty much everybody in this room who processes international passengers, be it you are a destination, airline, hoteliers, you need to figure out a travel health screening solution. Next slide, please. So what do we do? How do we do it? Traveler health screening, let's do a quick walkthrough. Either we can pull up the passenger details from the reservation system, or otherwise the traveler could manually enter them, your name, your date of travel, and your to and from port of entry. Next slide, please. Once we know your arrival port of entry, we then quickly provide you with the route requirements. The next slide. Then we make you provide us with your health documentation. Then we quickly get your recent travel history, followed by the self-health declaration form, how you're feeling today, if you have any cough, cold. If you're feeling all right, you move ahead and submit the form. Submit, please. Next slide. All right, voila. So the OCR scanner has quickly pulled up all of your details, and the rules engine quickly bucketizes the travelers into green within 8 seconds, which are good to go, within amber, which are dubious, and within red, which should be barred from onboarding the plane. That's where suppliers from looking all travelers from the eyes of skepticism quickly brings in the efficiency. Next slide, please. So this is built from the ground up. It's a structured database. We use our own proprietary GraphQL API, which collates more than 190 arrival protocol and destination protocol, departure protocol for more than 190 countries. It's an AI-based rules engine. And the OCR scanner and the QR code enables also the physical, the screening of the physical documentation by digitizing them. Next slide, please. In terms of competitive landscape, besides the health screening, we also have a play in content, and we also do the supplier benchmarking. Next slide, please. And next slide, please. So any travel segment which processes international travel, looking at 1 billion passengers.
We need to hear what the judges have to ask of you about Safe Travel Barometer. Judges, whenever you're ready.
Okay, so it sounds to me like this is actually like a huge project, right? So you're gonna handle like a big data, like huge data, and then it's like a bigger than like a Johns Hopkins University's COVID, like a database, whatever. So that's how can you really aggregate that data? I'm still confused. So.
Right, so it's hi Kay. So it is a huge undertaking. We began in May 2020, and we were among the very first ones to take a stab at, okay, what can we do to help the travel industry revive? The API that we have been at it for almost 15 months. So the content is completely ready. All the arrival and the destination protocols for 190 countries, we have that ready, and we update them 24/7. The health screening tool, the MVP, the prototype is ready. The rules-based engine is where the magic actually happens, and we do have it ready. What we still, the reason why we are out there raising capital is because we still need to get the layer of health, and then we are also out there looking for our pilot customers. But I would say that in the last 15 months, using our first mover's advantage, we have been able to cover quite some ground.
Thank you. And I think you're about to get to this, but I see here the market opportunity where you're potentially targeting to. And I think the solution is, Kay mentioned that there's, this is the answer to a lot of problems that we're trying to solve right now. But where do you really target? It seems like a very broad list here. What is the real target? How do you monetize it? Where does it go next?
We have been prioritizing the airline segment, particularly the low and the medium regional, intra-regional, airlines as compared to the full service carriers. Airlines which operate in underpenetrated markets and as compared to the first one. So that's the priority segment. And market opportunity was very straightforward. Any traveler would consume 2 products, 40 cents per traveler documentation. We are looking at a $1.6 billion market opportunity. I would like to think that we truly have a first mover's advantage in tapping into that couple of $1 billion opportunity.
I have a question around data and data protection. It's a huge undertaking and there's massive regulation around data and what you can use and share. How do you intend to convince government or even supplier to share the data with you?
Data protection and privacy are really the heart of what we're building. Right now, some of the solutions that are out there, they require the data to be transferred. We are a licensing solution where we provide the tech stack.
I'm sorry, that's it. We need to move on. So we originally had 6 startups scheduled, but because of Zoom emergencies, we'll be shuffling up the order that the startups present in. It shouldn't matter too much to delegates, but judges, do please take note that our next startup is actually going to be Mark Corbett pitching for Thrust Carbon. Mark, when you're ready.
Well, hello, everybody. Here at Thrust Carbon, everything we do is about driving travel to become effortlessly green. We believe in a world where our actions don't have to cost the earth. So we focus on emissions reporting, reduction, and removal. Next. So we face a global problem with a ticking clock. Whilst COVID has decimated lives, air pollution is still responsible for 3 times more fatalities in this time period. And transport, responsible for 16% of global emissions. Next. And what's happening at the moment is there's just no data. It's inaccurate, it's expensive, it's inaccessible based on averages. And the implication is all we can do to reduce emissions is just stop traveling, which is of no good to us here. The Thrust Carbon approach completely flips this on its head. We deliver pinpoint accurate data, live inside online booking tool environments, click of button reporting, and that enables us to drive the reductions in people's behaviors, really pushing towards lowest logical emissions per trip. And everything we do has offsetting sustainable aviation fuel coming soon, kind of embedded into our solution. So you have a whole solution. Next slide, please. And so the way we can do this is with our clients, we can demonstrate what their total impact is, rolled up all elements of travel, air, hotel, car, ferry, and so forth into one number. And as you can see here, we've got 53,000 tons of CO2, the equivalent of driving to the moon 1,000 times, 430 million days of video conferencing, which it kind of feels like we've just done, or kind of burning 33,000 oak trees. So we can do that because on the next slide, we are the carbon intelligence platform, software as a service for reporting, reduction, and removal of emissions. Now, our tools come in a variety of packages so that we can sell direct to enterprise and to TMCs and technology providers in the travel ecosystem. APIs, open data lake, and then these deep integrations. Next slide, please. So let's take a little look at the products. Up here, we've got our point of booking displays. So you can guide your traveler into making more sustainable decisions at the point of booking, with first off, the data visible in an engaging manner. And then secondly, driven home by our nudge recommendations. And we have a ways of doing this through our partnership with Shep, which means we can sit in any environment. And coming soon, later this year, we'll be making big announcements about the 10 TMCs in which we're already working and one of the world's largest online booking tools as well. Next slide. This shows us inside our data lake where clients can access all their data and hit click of button reports. Next slide again. Shows them how you can offset. That's particularly useful for the TMCs. And then on the next slide, we also have variety of solutions such as our offset shop. So we really package this inside all sorts of environments. And this has all been created because we have a team of technology innovators, travel experts, and we've now grown to 8 people in just the last year. So next slide. We are establishing ourselves as thought leaders in the space. And as you can see, it all begins with that data. If you do not have data, you cannot go green because you cannot follow this process. And next slide, to wrap up, we've been in the media just last week with the likes of Reuters and Skift showing the impact and how climate change is driving corporate decision making. And last slide to finish up, in that last year, we have amassed a client base, including the likes of S&P Global, Novartis, Harman International, and have really been driving them forward into creating more sustainable travel programs.
Judges, over to you for your questions.
Oh, thank you. So I think it's very clear what the outcome you want to produce, but I'm not clear how you necessarily provide it. So you mentioned the TMCs, we've got some corporates up here. Where is your kind of sweet spot and how does your business model work?
Yes, so specifically designed for direct enterprise sales and selling into TMCs. So for direct enterprise, we have our calculator solution to begin with that enables the reporting. And then for reduction, we have dashboards for individual travelers to get recommendations, insights. And then we have our nudge behavioral tools, which fit inside their online booking tool. As I said, at the moment, that's kind of partnered through SHEP. But then we're also delivering that data inside the technology environments of our TMC clients as well. And then everything we do with TMCs is based around a reseller model. So it becomes a really, really powerful means of engaging the industry. Not only can they show point of data booking, but they can also then sell on the analytical data so that their end clients can start making better decisions for the sake of our planet.
Thank you for the presentation. One of the best put today so far. One question on the calculation. There is no standard, right, how CO2 is being calculated. There's a lot of variation and rules. And so how do you solve that problem?
It's a great question. So rather than relying on simple DEFRA averages, kind of the coefficient number, we basically go into that next level of data. So when it comes to aircraft, by understanding what the aircraft is, we can totally map it out in terms of cabin configuration to show the difference between traveling in business to economy, but also accounting for things like load factor, adjusted distances, and all these other metrics. And we're consistently improving our methodology and calculations as we go. We're also on top of all the kind of the global science as things change. So it is a live methodology. We're also adding our own kind of proprietary layers to it. So at the moment, hotel is one of the weakest elements of benchmarking. We've got our own kind of ranking system that will be released by the end of the year. And that's a super exciting way to help actually demonstrate the difference between hotels all around the world.
So let me kind of clarify what's your competitive advantage. So I mean, it sounds to me, I think it's like a data science, data analysis is actually the area that you guys are really good at. And but as a startup, how, I mean, a little bit related to his question, how do you give the credibility?
I'm afraid I'll have to bust out the judge this time. Thank you, Kay. We're going to move on to our next startup, which is Table for One. So Kieran Huffy is calling in from Ireland. Kieran, whenever you're ready.
Hi everyone, I'm Kieran Huffy. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Table for One. During my corporate career, I was fortunate enough to travel all over the world on business, but half of the time I traveled on my own. And that's the industry standard. Half of business trips are solo. Now, a few years ago, I was in Manchester in England on a cold, wet November evening, and I had just closed one of the biggest deals of my career. I wanted to celebrate, but I was on my own. And I decided to treat myself to a nice meal. And as I was being brought to the table, I actually counted 10 people also eating alone in the restaurant. As luck would have it, I got sitting beside a really interesting guy. He had coincidentally just finished reading a book called Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi, great book. And we had a conversation, and that conversation, that guy, that night, that book literally changed my life. Next. And this is a big problem. In 2020, in the midst of the pandemic, we had $40 billion in spend on business travelers on solo meals. Next, please. And Table for One is all about taking these situations where we feel we could be more productive and converting them into life-changing opportunities like the one I mentioned. It's about creating new opportunities for solo business travelers, but it's also about creating opportunities for both the hospitality and business travel sectors to cater for, but more importantly, to capitalize on this underserved sector. Next, please. We do this by connecting solo business travelers and making it easy for them to meet. And we arrange for them to meet up in the places, in the locations that suit their own preferences. And those venues generate more revenue. Next, please. Corporates get more business development opportunities, hospitality partners, they can generate more revenue and they can offer their guests a better experience. Everybody wins with Table for One. Next, please. How do we generate revenue for hospitality and for Table for One? Well, if you take room service, for example, many solo travelers would order a room service, and room service is typically one course and one drink. With Table for One, we get the guest into the hotel restaurant and ideally get someone from outside the hotel to join them. One person, one course, one drink becomes two people, three courses. A glass of wine becomes a bottle and a cocktail or a drink afterwards. So we essentially upgrade a $30 bill to a $150 bill, and everyone is happy. And we earn a revenue share from the increased spend. Next, please. We're pursuing a B2B partnership strategy to build the audience by partnering with innovative brands all across the travel sector and allowing them to offer this functionality to their customers. Next, please. Our MVP had 50,000 downloads in more than 100 countries pre-COVID, and we're actually building the next version of Table for One to make it easy for partners to integrate with. Next, please. We have an incredible team with very different ways of thinking and diverse backgrounds, and we're supported by world-class advisors. Next, please. Now, more than ever, we understand the value of social connection, of real face-to-face communications. As we recover from the pandemic, many companies are looking for innovative ways to generate more revenue.
Thank you, Kieran, and thank you for sharing that little anecdote. Judges, if you'd like to take it away, your questions for Kieran.
Thanks, Kieran, for sharing. You mentioned the 50,000 downloads, and that was the first time I'd seen where we're coming from the end consumer side. There's a very visible opportunity for the restaurants and hospitality. Do we know if business travelers or individual travelers are actually looking for it? What research have we done in that?
Yeah, great question, Laura. Well, we've taken this to a variety of exhibitions. We brought it to Web Summit, to CES, to Collision, and we've literally spoken to thousands of consumers, all of whom are business travelers. And the reception has been unanimously positive. Now, granted, there are some times when if you've traveled away from the kids and the first night, you just want to sleep. But the second night or third night that you're there, there's an opportunity to do something different. So it's an alternative. It doesn't work for everybody all of the time, but it works for a lot of the people who are looking to get more value out of their business trips.
So tell me, how do you scale your business, especially in your customer acquisition strategy? I mean, and first of all, I think it's this market it sounds to me pretty niche, and so you really kind of wanted to work hard on acquiring new users, new app users. So I'm curious about your customer acquisition strategy.
Sure. Well, our strategy is to partner with brands who already have the audience so that we can offer that functionality to the brands. Just as an example, Marriott Bonvoy has 120 million users. We can be a button on their website or their app so that that functionality can be offered to their customers, and we add value to the hospitality chain simultaneously. So our model is to integrate and connect with existing businesses who have the audience, and we can offer the functionality, and we can supplement that with our own organic user acquisition that we've proven with the 50K downloads. But our core objective is to partner with existing brands and enhance their customer offering. Great question, Luffy.
A question on the users. How do you actually vet the users and make sure that we don't end up into a dating site or dating application here?
Thanks, Fred. Great question. So the first thing we do is users log in and register using LinkedIn. We also have the option to...
and it looks like we're not going to find out how the users have vetted. I'm very happy to have Matthew Hiller representing Trex Secure to take us home. Whenever you're ready, Matthew.
Great, thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you. Can we go to the first slide, please? First of all, thank you for having us. We're really honored to present Trex Secure today. And the best way to define what Trex Secure is to begin with a question. And that question is what needs to happen whenever a contagious disease is reported. This is actually a very personal question for me. I've got 2 flight attendants in my family, and at the beginning of COVID, they were terrified to go to work. So I asked them, what happens to you as a flight attendant when a disease is reported? And they honestly didn't know. So we started digging into it and looked up all of the regulatory processes for this. They're very complex. And the problem is that they're being done manually today. And the reality is that more than 98% of exposed passengers will receive no notification whatsoever. So what we've done is automated those regulatory processes so that instead of taking weeks or months or not being done at all, they're executed within a matter of seconds. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so the best way to look at this is to identify the actual problem. And the sobering reality is that commercial aviation is the primary catalyst that ignites and perpetuates a pandemic. This is exactly how COVID was able to reach every country in the world inside of 4 weeks. The good news on this is that if we're able to identify and notify people who have been exposed, we can prevent 80% of forward transmissions. But without the ability to track and respond to this threat, we will absolutely go back to zero and repeat this with the next contagion. And the reason for that is that all of the measures that are being implemented today become completely obsolete in the event of a new emerging contagion. So everything that we're doing today is focused on COVID, vaccines, testing, and so on. New disease XYZ that pops up will eliminate all of those things. Can we go to the next slide, please? This is a really big topic to cover in 4 minutes, but we've broken it down to give you an example of how this is utilized by a government. So you see Trex Secure sitting in the middle of the cloud. This is on a government or airline's infrastructure. As a company, we have absolutely no custody of personal data whatsoever. These are already the people that have the data. And we were able to bring in all of the information from multiple sources, P&Ls, manifest, health forms, travel pass, and so on, to notify all of the relevant stakeholders. Everything that we do is GDPR compliant and exceeds all international data privacy standards. Next slide, please. When we built the first version of Trex Secure, we wanted to get it checked out. So we reached out to Dr. Chris Belland. He's one of the top 3 doctors in aerospace medicine in the world. He's on the CAPSCA committee and has extensive experience working with pandemics like Ebola. We worked with him every day for about 4 months to take what he had developed over 2 years of research and development. We took his processes, automated them, and then refined them even further with machine learning and AI and so on. And you can see the statement there that had Trex Secure been in place prior to COVID, we could have reduced this significantly. Next slide, please. So the system itself is very easy to deploy, is fully developed, and the best part is that no action is required on the part of passengers. There's no app to download. Anything that relies on an app to download really won't be effective, and there's a full audit trail, and we exceed all the FAA, CDC, ICO guidelines, and so on. Next slide, please. The notifications go out in 20 different languages with a backup copy in English. You'll see the button at the bottom for the passengers to acknowledge receipt. This provides a clear audit trail for all health authorities and airlines to know that those people have actually been contacted and sent the relevant information. Next slide, please. We were one of the winning finalists of the UNWTO and also endorsed by APFA, which is the union representing 25.
We're going to have to let the judges have their 3 minutes with you now, judges, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Question, how do you compete with other existing, I'm not sure I understand how does that compete with other existing app or solutions on the market already that track passengers? I was flying last night and I got all sort of message already reaching out to me with this type of information.
Right. So actually, we're not tracking passengers at all, and there's really no one that's doing what we're doing. We're automating regulatory processes and also all the internal processes for airlines. So all the intricate interactions between flight services, flight operations, legal, and HR, and so on. It's not tracking anyone at all, and we're the only ones in our space doing this. We're engaged now with more than 13 governments around the world, and one of the top 10 airlines, one of the most forward-thinking airlines. So I hope that answers your question somewhat. You can't do this in 4 minutes. It's a very complex topic, but we stand alone in what we're doing. We have patents pending on the technology.
Can you describe your business model? How do you actually make money, and how you monetize your service and products?
Sure, it's very easy actually. We've modeled it for airlines. We've modeled it after Timatic. If you're familiar with that system from IATA, Timatic is what clears passengers to fly. So it's based on usage for airlines. So per passenger, a very minor charge. It's really negligent, and it pays for itself with the workload reductions for the airline. We actually reduce work by over 95% and guarantee compliance with all regulatory processes. For governments, it's a little bit different. It's a license model and also usage-based. This can be attached to things like passenger service charges and so on, but that's entirely up to the government to decide how they want to charge for the system.
And thank you. So you mentioned, obviously it's very relevant right now with COVID, where we're at, and there'll be the next one. We know that, we don't know when. Do you think that companies, governments, airlines will stay as engaged in the conversation as COVID kind of dies down while we wait for the next? Because we've seen in the past, unless it's top of mind now, it loses momentum.
Yeah, it does in a way. And so what we did is we're in it for the long haul. What we did is we built in every notifiable disease. There are more than 20 of them. And whenever a new emerging contagion arises, it can be added to the system instantly. We're finding a lot more traction with governments. As I mentioned, we're engaged now with more than 13 of them. The airlines, especially in the United States, have pushed back on this. They don't want any responsibility.
That's all the time
so that's been a little bit of a struggle.
Thank you very much to our judges for your great questions, and congratulations to the startups on the phenomenal job you did getting here. I wish all the best to each of you.